Hey guys, thought I'd make a real quick video before E3 drops. It's, Saturday, June 10th, and we're expecting the Microsoft conference tomorrow. I'm excited for that. I might live stream it, but probably not. And if you hear any noise in the background, the air conditioning is running because it is hot as balls in here, and thank God, in 3 weeks, I'm moving to a place with central air, so not only will it be way more comfortable, but won't have to worry about that stupid background noise caused by a loud air conditioner. Anyways, I need to get this off my chest because I've been seeing this on YouTube and on the internet way too often. It started with a video that I actually just tried to find on YouTube before I started recording this, but I couldn't find it, so it was probably taken down, and that wouldn't surprise me because the creator initially disabled comments on the video because people are correcting his mistake. It was actually a pretty good video. It was about, the top 10 things the Wii U did better than the Switch. And yes, Wii U did do some things better than the Switch, but one of the things listed in there was graphical power, and he said that the Wii U was a more powerful system than the Switch. And the example that he used was the fact that the Switch had the same frame rate problems that the Wii U had. I don't really understand it, but that's basically what was said. And I've been seeing this echoed across the internet too. Maybe not many people were saying that the Wii U is more powerful, but a lot of people are saying that the Switch is just on par with the Wii U or barely beyond it. But that is quite simply just not the case, and I want to present the definitive proof. Honestly, this was buried, pretty much day one of the Switch's launch, maybe even before that. But I want to just present some proof in a video that completely debunks this bullshit notion that the Switch is just barely at Wii U's level or barely beyond it, because it's just not true. And I'm going to start off with one game that I can think of in particular that's made by a super talented developer who is known for understanding Nintendo hardware through and pushing the absolute most value possible out of the graphical chips and the processor chips inside the Nintendo systems. So the game I want to talk about is Fast RMX Fast Racing Neo, made by Shinen, who, like I said, they are a super talented game. Fast Racing Neo is originally put together by a team of maybe 5 people, and as shown in the Digital Foundry video that I'm going to link to in the description here, they were able to push a lot of visual effects that simply just weren't really seen on the Wii U at all in that generation, especially in a 60 frame per second game. However, what happened on the Wii U is that the game ran in a 720p resolution. But wait, no, it didn't actually run in a 720p resolution. It actually ran in 640 by 720, and then a process similar to the checkerboard rendering used in the PS4 Pro and some other games was used to bring it to 1280 by 720 on the horizontal resolution there. So basically you had a 640 by 720 game that was kind of being reconstructed into a 1280 by 720 game, and for the most part the detail was somewhat there, although there was some flickering. Like I said, watch the Digital Foundry video if you haven't seen it yet, because they pretty much explain the whole thing. What happened when Fast RMX got ported over to the Switch? Well, one, Shinen basically optimized it for the Switch hardware almost perfectly. And what did we get from that? We got smoother performance, higher graphical effects, so the lighting was improved, there was dynamic lighting improved on the front of the ships, we got new and improved screen space effects, we had increased resolution on rain droplets that looked more realistic on when they were on the screen in rainy tracks, a lot of graphical updates, but that's not all that happened. In addition to those graphical updates, we also saw the resolution get bumped from that weird temporal reconstructed 720p up to a full native 1080p. So if the Wii U ran the game in a native 720p, which it didn't, then we would have seen the resolution bump increase by 2.25 times. So that's, over twice the resolution bump, in addition to those graphical effects. But it's more than twice the resolution bump. It was probably significantly more than that because the Wii U, again, did not run it in a native 720p. It was this weird checkerboarded 720p, I guess you could say. And at least that's the process that it's most similar to. Now, granted, the Switch version does have a dynamic resolution that goes about as low as 900p at times, but the thing to consider is that there is a kind of a bug in the Switch's firmware which puts some load on the GPU that's not exactly needed, and Shinen says that once that's fixed up, that the game is going to stick to a native 1080p. Of course, they'll still keep the dynamic resolution in there just to make sure that the game performs at 60 frames per second without any hitches, but right now, once that's all fixed up, we're seeing a game that's running with maybe 3 to 4 times the graphical abilities that the Wii U version was ever capable of. taking into account the plethora of additional graphical effects added to it, the much higher resolution, the much higher rendering resolution, and let's not forget some bonuses such as 3 and 4 player split screen not tanking the resolution even more and seeing a drop to 30 frames per second like on the Wii U version. And keep in mind, everything that I just described here was done by a tiny, tiny little indie developer, and the initial game was put together by about 5 people, and I don't even know how many people did this port. It must have been the same amount of people or smaller. As talented as Shinen is, just imagine what a proper, large-funded developer, or even Nintendo themselves, could do when they really learn about the hardware as well as possible and push it to its absolute limits compared to what was done on the Wii U. In fact, we can't even really use Nintendo as an example yet because any version of the Wii U game that was then ported over to the Switch, they haven't really done much to it. I mean, Zelda Breath of the Wild, it had some fixes after release, and right now its frame rate is, as far as I know, it's faring a lot better than the Wii U version. I haven't really played the Wii U version or kept up with its updates, but I know that the frame rate was fixed up a lot. But it was told to us many times by Nintendo, well, not Nintendo, but developers at Nintendo, that the Switch version was not really optimized for the Switch hardware. It was a direct port with just enough code changes to make it run on the different architecture, and then they've been kind of slowly fixing it since then. And even with that very tiny amount of optimization that was done, they still managed to increase the resolution from 720p to 900p, which is a pretty big difference in detail. If they properly optimized the game, they could easily get it at 1080p. Now, 60 frames per second? Not totally sure. While the processor inside the Switch is miles better than the one inside the Wii U, I still don't know if it's quite good enough to get 60 frames per second in that game. Just remember that it's not just the GPU that limits the frame rate in video games, but also the CPU. And while the CPU in the Switch is actually fairly close, at least clock for clock, to the ones inside the PS4 and Xbox One, you have to keep in mind that the ones in the PS4 and Xbox One are pretty weak too. Those are very weak, pretty much tablet CPUs, which is what the Switch is obviously using. What about Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? At the very least, like I said, their resolution on the Wii U went from 720p, it was native on the Wii U, to 1080p on the Switch, which, like I said earlier, was a 2.25 times increase in resolution. And they managed to fix the weird frame pacing issues that the Wii U version for some reason had. So that right there, in itself, is over a 2 times increase on a game that probably, just like Breath of the Wild, didn't really get a crazy amount of optimization, if any, for the Switch. I mean, if the Wii U was able to smoothly run it, then the Switch, with just minor code porting, should have been able to easily do it too. So I doubt they really did anything beyond that, because they didn't need to. They just needed to get the resolution up to 1080p. I mean, what could the Switch do if Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was properly optimized? 1440p? Not 4K or anything, but who knows? Now, those are the only examples I'm going to use for now. I mean, as time goes on, we're going to get more examples of that. Of course, the Wii U's not really going to get any more games, so we can't compare with it, but at least we could see what the Switch is capable of doing. It's obviously not even close to the original Xbox One, but look at the form factor between the two. One of them's a small handheld tablet, and the other one's a big box that you put underneath your TV. Even if you compare it the Xbox One S's size, if the Switch was capable of Xbox One-esque visuals, then we would have seen the Xbox One S being a hell of a lot smaller than it actually was. And I'm not talking about just the box, but the motherboard itself. You can actually see many disassemblies of it. Ben Hex is my favorite. And you can see that the board is definitely a lot bigger than the Switch's board. However, saying that the Switch is on the same level as Wii U and it's not really anything beyond the Wii U is, well, stupid. And it was completely shot down and disproven day one. And it's just kind of frustrating to see that pop up in comment sections and videos, even though it takes 2 seconds of Googling to figure out the difference between the two. The Wii U's GPU, when it was released, it still was pretty weak, but the GPU on the Wii U was a fair bit stronger than the ones inside the 360 and PS3, which is why you would see some of the multiplats, even with those getting hardly any optimization whatsoever, you would still see increased graphical effects and better textures and other stuff like that. I mean, look at Need for Speed Most Wanted. That's a pretty jarring example of graphical difference between the Wii U and 360 and PS3 versions. But the CPU was basically a glorified Power Mac G3 CPU. It was very, very weak, pretty much just an overclocked version of what was inside the GameCube on a... I don't even know if the manufacturing process was that much lower. I know the GPU was 45 nanometers on the Wii U, and the one inside the Switch is 20, and if they went with Pascal, it could have been 16. Basically, the Wii U CPU is very, very old, and that right there is what held the system back. And yes, the Wii U's GPU could offload a lot of the CPU tasks, but that required a lot of extra programming, which is the reason why you saw a lot of people, a lot of developers say that the Wii U was the hardest to program for, even though the 360 before it also had the PowerPC architecture. In fact, the 360 was similar to the Power Mac G4, I think, or the G5, one of those two. It's basically the weak CPU and needing the GPU to offload CPU tasks is what caused it to be harder to program for, not the fact that it was PowerPC. But at the end of the day, that CPU is weak, and the GPU is definitely weaker than the Switch. The Switch is a nice jump ahead. And another funny thing I'm seeing a lot of is people saying that the Switch is as powerful as the 360, even though the Switch has 8 times the RAM, the total system RAM, 8 times the RAM of the 360. Yeah, so if you see people saying that stuff, just, point this stuff out to them, or share this video, whatever you want to do. But if the Switch was just at the level of the 360 or the Wii U, then why is it showing games and contents with much higher resolutions and better graphical effects that could never be accomplished on those old systems? Answer that question for me. Anyways, I hope you guys all enjoy this E3 weekend. I'm not going to be home to see the Nintendo one live, and I'm going to avoid social media for the day because I want to surprise myself. But I won't be able to live stream the Nintendo E3 show because of the fact that I will be at work, and I'm not one of those people who is willing to take paid time off at work just to watch an E3 presentation. The only one I'm actually going to be willing to watch live as it happens is Microsoft, which is going to be taking place as of the time of this recording tomorrow, which is going to be June 11th, 2017. So I'll probably make a video about that because I've been talking shit about the Xbox brand in general. But I'm still excited for the Microsoft press conference, and I'm excited for the Scorpio, so I'll probably make a video on that too coming up. Anyways, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.